Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you want to find out more about what we do and you're on YouTube, go to officehours.global. Our first hour here on Saturday is going to be a general discussion. Any questions that you have around media or virtual production, if you've already gone through the whole process of getting to Makana, and you'll find out more about that at officehours.global. It's the next hour. It's 8 o'clock to about 9:30 or so is the education hour and a half. And that is not streamed to YouTube, so you'll need to be here in Zoom to see that. And then at 10 o'clock, we're going to have the Belfast Method, but we're going to be doing it with Todd Reynolds. And I saw a bunch of cool testing last night. It's going to be awesome. And then and there's a separate link in the email that goes out that you'll see that will allow you to get into that. That's a separate meeting. And then at noon, we'll be back here and we'll be cooking with Damyanti Gajjar in South Africa. And I've got all my stuff. I went out shopping. I was actually in a very office hours moment. I was listening to everybody DXing Todd while at Whole Foods, buying the food for Damyanti's cooking thing. I was like, this is the most office hours thing ever. Anyway, so that's at noon. At 2 o'clock, the remotes are going to be back here, and they'll be talking about how they put everything together for the last song and video. But now I'm going to hand it off to the host for the morning, Emily Russo. Take it away, Emily.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we are going to work on your questions and help you out. So I see we have a lot of questions in there, but feel free to go into Mukana and add questions. Remember, voting on them helps us decide which question goes next. And we'll go ahead and get started because it looks like we got a few.
First question comes from Mike Emmett in Melbourne, Australia. He said, what do you pack in your kit when you go on site for a setup, just in case?
Rupert?
So if we're talking like travel type setups, then I like to travel with a kit of a size that I can carry spares for. So if I'm taking my laptop and a Brio and a headset and the thing, I need to have backup options for all of those. So I'll take a C920 also, and I'll take a spare pair of earbuds also, just a backup for everything. Also, I like to travel with a multifunction Wi-Fi device, one that I can turn into a client bridge or a router or a switch, just to get myself a little bit of networking if I need to, get out of a hole. And also plethora of adapters. You don't really know what you might need, but just try and throw a handful of adapters in the bag and make something might help in the end.
Excellent. Will?
Tylenol and granola bars. Don't forget that you're going to have to take care of yourself as well as the equipment.
Always good. Jeffrey?
I was going to say gum, because that's always, your mouth gets dry and everything. So water and gum. But the other thing is, and it depends on if you're traveling via car versus via plane, where you don't have that much room to pack things into. The best thing to do is to make a map, and especially if you've got a rental car, make the drive to the local electronics store, to the local Walgreens, to the local, so you know what the distance is, the time is to go get the items that you might be missing.
Way to be prepared. Yes. Jason?
I work about medium-sized broadcasts, so when I go, I make sure I have an extra SDI distribution box, so that way I can make sure I can break out stuff. I've had to break out multiple channels multiple times. And then this has happened before, but we were in the middle of a shoot and we had cameras go down with zoom controls. So making sure I have the extra zoom controls just in case you need to back those up.
Peter?
I found the thing I throw in that I've used it more than once, not planning to use it, is a streaming bridge. It's the Blackmagic streaming bridge. It provides me a way to get a what do you want to call it? A confidence monitor out to somebody easily in a place where they weren't set up to do that. So,
Guy?
Got a few things. Lots of these little Apple dongles. Hotspot that is Ethernet with AT&T on that one, in addition to the iPad that also has internet connection, Huddle Cam, the Rode NTG USB, and it all fit. Oh yeah, Live View Solo, and it all fits in this case.
Went black there. Oh, there you're back.
Sorry, the red Adamus emergency case. So that's my emergency kit.
Nicely done. Alex?
We typically have either a 1510, 1650, or entire case, like a road case that's called Crikey. And so it depends on how big the project is and how many backups. In my little 1510, I usually have some kind of video recorder. For a long time, it's been a Pix 240, but I'm moving up to the Blackmagic 12G, as something that you can just see signal. Then also something that's going to measure signal. So there's a little, I can't think of the name of it right now, and I don't have it right in front of me, but it's like a little audio. You can plug XLRs in and just get audio out. It's made by Whirlwind. Makes this little audio piece.
CT3 cable tester. CT3.
It's not a cable tester. It's actually a tone. It'll generate tone. It has a little speaker, and I just can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. But I have one of those. I also typically have either a Fabrics, SDI. It'll generate test signals and also read them, or we've been starting to play with digital forecast. I haven't bought one yet, but I'm probably going to. It's a lot less expensive. It does most of the same things. And then gaff tape is useful. Wired headphones in ear, just like little in-ear Etymotic 3s, I think, are the ones that I use. That I can plug into something that's wired with a 1/4-inch adapter, so that I can just, if there's something that is pushing audio out, I can test it for that. And then, as I said before, clip bars, power bars, that kind of thing. I never assume, I always, as a producer, I always make sure that there's plenty of crafty, but as someone on the team, I never expect to get crafty the whole day. Like literally, I show up with enough in my bag that I could run the entire day without food if they didn't give it to me, to make sure that I don't, if something goes wrong, I'm not sitting there lightheaded or hungry or frustrated.
Or hangry. Yeah.
Hangry.
Get over the
Worse than a
hanger.
hangry staff. So
Exactly.
I hold it as a producer. I hold it my responsibility to make sure everyone's fed. As a worker, I expect myself to be totally self-contained.
Great. Next question.
Did we miss Will? I think we might have jumped over.
No, I think he went in there twice.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question is from Mike Emmett in Melbourne, Australia. Can we have a show and tell of panelists' favorite $50 or less of indispensable kit? Mine is the small rig swivel and tilt friction monitor mount that's now on every camera rig. What's yours?
Chad?
First, I'm a little surprised nobody said decimator to the last question, but it's okay.
It was on my list in my head and I forgot it. Yeah, decimator is the other thing that goes into every bag. It's probably the most common thing. Anyway, go ahead.
Thank you. Now everything is as it should be. In this group, it's hard to come up with things that are less than $50 because I think we're all surrounded by like a couple $100 worth of each item. But if I had to, I'd say 3 of the things in here are the things that I send to other people to use in their kits. And in fact, right now I'm using the earbuds. So these are Mi M6. They're fairly discreet. I own in-ears that are much more expensive than this, but these give me a better sound. They're easier to see, but they give me a better sound. And this is a reasonably good audio solution that I send out to clients and that for my day job I use because I don't want to apply $1,500 worth of gear to my day job's little Microsoft Teams meetings. That would feel silly.
Roscoe.
Chad stole the thing. I was going to do this. Look at this. It's exactly what Chad had, but it's showing, show and tell. So basically, what I'm wearing, it's a Pulson ESM2, costs $25, and then the Audio-Technica sound card, the plug that you just saw is about $25 also.
Jason.
These converters, these SDI to HDMI Blackmagic converters are indispensable with what it is that I do, constantly having to convert signals back and forth to different different workflows. And then also, I don't have it with me because it's actually down in my car, but a Leatherman, some sort of multi-tool, taking it with me. You'd be surprised at how handy that thing comes into play.
Yeah, I actually was going to say Leatherman if no one said it, so good. And Jeffrey.
Yeah, I was going to say Leatherman too, but there are several different things from anything from Neewer, lights and clamps and everything. A lot of stuff are under $50 and they're very indispensable and very usable. And another thing is I've been finding that the GoPro Hero 4s have been sold. You can buy one for around $50 to $60, which becomes very indispensable if you want to do like an overhead shot, because you can set it up into an HDMI cable, set it as an overhead shot. It's got decent enough picture for things like that. I wouldn't use it for any type of main shots, but now that we've got all these multi-switching devices, it's really nice to have a camera like that you can position around.
Rupert?
I couldn't quite get in under the $50, but for $59, the OtterBox for my cell phone has paid for itself over and over and over again. Every time I drop my phone, it isn't that much, but every time I do, it's like, well, that just paid for itself and more.
Alex?
The thing that slips right under $50 that I have a lot of are these Oben TT. I can cut to it, I think. This is an Oben TT100 tabletop tripod with a flexible little head. $45, and I probably have bought 100 of these. This is what we hook our little monitors on and set them down. In fact, I have one right here in front of me holding a Pix right now. But for little monitors, tabletop or something like that is super useful.
Mark?
Thick pens, felt tip pens, and stickies to mark things.
Yeah, very good.
That's always very helpful. Cannot tell you how many Sharpies we have in this house. It's too many. Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. When you're cutting on a switcher with more than 2 to 4 MEs, how do you keep from being overwhelmed with what's going on where?
Roscoe?
This goes back to analog days for me, but basically you have to look at a switcher just like you do an audio board. It looks, like there's all these knobs and all these things, but they all line up in a row. So everything that's on input 1 is going to be all the way down on input 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 across. After that, you just need practice. You need time on that switcher to mentally understand that as it comes out that channel, what you're going to be doing with it. And that's just time and experience. Live shows, they can get really hot and intense. So, you better know your who's calling the shots. You better have a really good relationship with that person.
Alex?
It's actually, for me, less overwhelming in a 4ME switcher to have a panel that has 4MEs on it so that I can see everything that's going on, as opposed to what's harder is in a 1ME panel with a 4ME switcher is jumping back and forth between which one you're in. But when you have them all exposed to you, remember that you're only typically cutting one show. And so these other ones are building things for that show. And you just have to really have a clear idea of what those things are building. So you're cutting inside of a super source, or you're supplying something over here. So you're not usually those are there to serve the main ME as it works through it. And as Roscoe said, practice. You want to find things that you can do that you can cut with it.
Jason?
My students, you typically use the MEs more for the effects portion as opposed to the mix. So we're using them more as virtual inputs more than anything else. For them, having a graphic organizer of what layers are set up on the ME is extremely helpful for them, because they might have to bring in stuff with a couple of DSKs later on down the line or whatever. So just having a visual indicator for them helps out a lot. And then we're using your inputs just as your primary sources. Just try not to mix anything with those inputs. Try and add it specifically to an ME.
Great. Next question.
Next question is from Joel in Mumbai, India. He said, I tried VideoCom Zoom-Bridge for NDI. It worked stable enough. Has anyone else tried it?
Guy?
Yeah, I was all excited when it first came out, and then I used it and wasn't as impressed. It's cool in the idea, but try going into like after hours with it. It's a basic app written in, I believe, Electron. Andy Carlucci was telling me that certain meetings, like registered meetings, you won't be able to get into with it because of the way that it's written. So it might be good if you're doing like your own in-house stuff and you're used to going to certain meetings. It also has some limitations, like it'll only do 720p and it doesn't do audio. So I would use a Zoom Room that has NDI, has isolated audio, or Andy Carluccio's Zoom ISO. That app it's okay, but download the free trial and give it a roll and see if it works for you.
Great. Next question.
Next question is from Rupert McCrae. How many watts or kilowatts have you of the actual load do you think or know your home studio uses?
Alex?
I think that mine is at when everything is on, it sits at about 1,300 watts. So it's just under the 1,500 that my UPS handles. So I have two. I've actually split it because I don't like to have things that maxed out. So I actually split it between two different ones. So all my Ethernet or all my internet connections are on one big 1500 VA that's there, and then the rest of my office isn't. And from a production perspective, I'm always surprised at how little it takes because it's lights and all the gear and everything else. But that's what the readout at least says on my little UPS. Anyone else? Anyone knows? Yeah, having a kilowatt or having a UPS. I mean, because everything in my office is on a UPS, so it's so that I can look at the draw, that goes through it.
Okay, next question.
Next question is from Rupert McCrae. He said, what is the panelist preference for using the Discord desktop app versus Discord in a browser?
Chad?
Personally, I use a browser because I tend to have multiple tabs open in the Discord. I'm managing user lists over here, and I'm reviewing whose names are still the way that they're supposed to be in the Discord. And I don't like having extra apps open. If I can keep everything confined into a browser interface, it makes me happier because I don't have extra cycles being executed that I don't necessarily have to have.
Will?
Yeah, same. I'm browser for Discord, for Slack, even for Twitter and Outlook. I'm just switching computers all the time, so it's easier to keep things synchronized that way.
Peter?
Well, I guess I'm the odd man out because I use the app on the Mac because I have several different Discord channels, and it's just easier to keep. It's the app on the Mac and it's the app on my iPhone, and it works essentially works the same way. So I have a consistent view of life that way.
Jeffrey?
I hate programs that create apps that run in the background and become services that run onto your computer, Mac or PC, because that means that when you reboot a computer, all of that stuff reloads. And if you're doing any type of production, it just takes one app to start taking up all the resources and cause a problem. So that's why I don't have Slack on mine, and I don't have Discord on mine. And if I could take off some of these other ones, I would as well.
Alex?
So I use Command Tab a lot. so that's how I navigate my computer. So I'll have a whole bunch of apps open. I'm hitting Command Tab, and what that does on a Mac is it lets you just jump between applications in a lot of ways, because if I put things in the web, it defeats that. So generally I want I want everything in an application because it's just easier for me to get to it. So that's the reason I use the app.
Next question.
Next question is from Emily Russo from Nashville, Tennessee. Good to join us, Emily. Thank you for asking a question. New work from home job, and you are given $500 for tech. What are the must-haves to make the work from home office awesome? Note, you have the monitor and computer given to you.
Might help if I call on someone. Roscoe.
Well, I was going to answer. Well, my first question would be, are you going to use the camera in the computer, or is there a camera in the computer? Is it a laptop, or are you looking because then I would go for a good camera and good lighting. Brio would be my first choice.
I have the Brio. I'm actually asking for a coworker because he's setting up his, and I'm like, I have a production studio. And he's not there. So, Will?
Oops, sorry. Yeah, I've got a Brio here. Yeah, those are great. Comfortable headphones. It's going to depend on the person to what you can wear for hours. If you're in an environment where you can't have a speaker, otherwise, the speaker you can jack up that you can hear from the bathroom for those meetings where you're just having to listen, or where you want to walk around, do laundry, that makes it a whole lot easier.
Chad?
We've already had to look at my screen once today, but here it comes again. So I have a newer ring light, a Logitech Brio, the Mi M6, Audio Technica audio adapter. This is the pile, and extra wire because you really want to be able to be mobile while you're tethered to your desk by all those wires. Gives you a little extra space, and that's roughly $500. That's got a little room to spare, I think.
Rupert?
So I just got a teleprompter, a little 12-inch one, and I can highly recommend it. So, and that was, that was one, I got it for 100, but they're available for between 100 and 150. And then the Brio in that, that's what I'm using right now, a Brio in there. And then that leaves, in that 500 budget, leaves you some budget there to get a monitor of the size of your preference to put in that prompter, and you can get that package for well under 500, and it is well worth it.
Nice. Jeffrey.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I'm putting together a prompter myself using these portable gaming monitors. You just have to figure out a way to affix it. But mine's actually not as much of a tech thing, because you can either go down to Goodwill or you can go to a craft store and get picture frames and then and some paint or something like that. And you go ahead and you paint them, because the most important thing is you can have microphones that will be close to your mouth. But as we're hearing with Chad's sound, because he's now getting ready to move, he's taking down stuff and he's getting more of a room bounce in his room. So by putting up things like picture frames and canvas, you're limiting the amount of bounce in the room, and therefore you're going to sound a lot better to your audience. So that would be my thing. Straight up. Yeah.
Tony?
Work from home, APS.
Or APC.
ABC. I'm sorry, ABC.
UPS.
UPS, uninterruptible power supply.
From APC.
Yeah. And then Guy.
Yeah, I'd probably say, in addition to everything that everybody else has been talking about, if they are doing a lot of video conferencing, we've got the camera, lighting, microphone. But if they're doing just kind of more just regular work, multiple monitors, of course, a better keyboard than whatever comes with the system. A good trackpad or a trackball is what I use instead of a cheap mouse, and then a Stream Deck and programming some certain features that you're doing all the time, repetitive tasks, like you're typing emails, like our customer service people have these where it says, "Greetings, so-and-so," and it'll put in their name, "Thank you for your question." And then they can start typing from there, and it puts in their last name and the sincerely and all that stuff. So if you're doing the same stuff a lot, Stream Deck.
Great. Next question.
Next question is from Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. He says, the Shure IntelliMix DSP now has a certified integration with Microsoft Teams. The BlueJeans platform already has Dolby technology built in. What big name audio integrations would we like to see in Zoom, in hardware or software?
Alex?
I think that a Zoom, Dolby would be great. Being able to, the BlueJeans integration is pretty basic. It just kind of spreads people out in throughout the scene. But what I'd really love to see, of course, is being able to push, actual Dolby, either have it do a binaural connection if it got something, or actually the channels. Because I think that that'd be really interesting for concerts and music and everything else across it. I do think that they'd have to improve their ability to force stereo first, to be able to base. Right now, we have found that stereo is hard, and it seems to be connected to people connecting over phones. Seems to defeat the stereo output. So I think that they'd have to get better at forcing that before they went down another path. But I think being able to provide a Dolby 5.1 or 7.1 or 7.1.4, 5.1.4, 7.1.2, any of those across Zoom could be really interesting.
Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. He said, what makes the Heil PR40 such a popular podcast conferencing mic versus others like the Earthworks ICON PRO? And he has a link there.
Jason?
In a word, Leo. I know for me, once I saw Leo Laporte utilizing it a lot, and then saw Tom Merritt utilizing it a little bit more, it's just one of those things that kind of populated out. But also our audio class here on campus has some Shure SM7Bs, and then they didn't pick up any PR40s. And the main reason why is because the way in which they use the directional pickup pattern of the Shure SMBs seem to fit better with what it is that they do, as opposed to the Heil, where they're talking over it. And there are some individuals that are like me that like to use their hands to kind of talk, and trying to have a microphone underneath won't let you do that. Whereas more with something like a Shure SM7B, the direction allows you to kind of do that.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, absolutely. The popularity of who's been using the Heil and the status that it gets, that you kind of get to when you have a Heil in front of your face, is there are many different microphones that will work even better than the Heil PR40, but and a lot of the USB microphones are not dynamic. Or actually, I don't think there is a single USB dynamic. Maybe there is, but I'm thinking about maybe that. I've got an IK multimedia sitting right there. That is, but the whole point is that this is a nice a tight mic that you can put in any situation, and hook up to a mixing board and make it sound decent for the whatever you're using it for.
Roscoe.
I usually avoid things that declare themselves the industry standard. Just looking over their marketing material, it's just, you know, the industry standard, you don't have to declare yourself that. And the second thing, I'll miss that NAB, is walking to a booth that doesn't sell the object I'm looking for, but seeing what they're using in their booth. So if I'm looking for tripods, I go look at all the camera manufacturers and see what they're willing to put their cameras on. That's a good way to know kind of what the industry standard is.
That's a great tip. Tony?
And I'm just going to give the layman's response. People seem to like the way it sounds.
And Alex?
Yeah, the main reason I have a lot of mics, and I have ones that are more expensive and less expensive. The reason that I use it for this show specifically is because it has it's very quiet, so it has very low self noise. It has high off-axis rejection, so you don't hear the rest of my house. But it also has a very wide dynamic range as far as, you know, what it's going to pick up. And that's something that I haven't found another mic at the same price that can produce the same sound. So the reason that I do it is very much, it's not any kind of status thing. It's not because they say they're industry standard. It's because I own probably 12 or 15 mics. And this is the only one for a show. Like when I do voiceovers, I'm using a Neumann 103. When I'm doing, you know, when I travel, I use a headset. When I do any kind of interviews where I'm just holding onto it, I'm using a SM58. So there's lots of different mics that I use along the way. But for a radio show, I think that the PR40 is probably, in my opinion, the best mic for the price.
Next question.
Next question is from Eddie Scott in Mission Viejo, California. What ever happened to the little red recording dot that used to be at the top left?
Alex?
I stopped recording. So we put what we want to put on YouTube. I was building up this massive collection of stuff in the back end on Zoom, and I was like, "There's no reason. I'm never going back to this." So, you know, because the stuff I don't consider what we do that evergreen. You know, we answered the question for today, and so I just didn't feel like it was necessary anymore. So anyway, that's why it's not there anymore.
All right, moving on.
Next question is from Robert Green. What is the video equivalent of Dante?
Chad?
The first instinct is to say NDI, but there is also Dante AV, which is actually starting to come out with equipment that supports it, and it is routed the same way Dante is. So if you're accustomed to Dante for audio, it should be very similar to be able to route your signal with Dante AV.
Jason?
Same thing Chad said.
Rupert?
I think you just have to be a little careful with the equivalent. You know, things like NDI, you can be a bit more aggressive with. You know, Dante is pretty sensitive, and it of course has the hardware clock signal built in, which NDI doesn't have. So it's not a necessarily direct equivalent, but obviously it is transport over IP.
Alex?
I think it's actually a closer equivalent to say 2110. It's probably closer to Dante than NDI, just because of the way it manages it from a reference signal. Anyway.
Next question.
Next question is from Tom Rothrock from Huntsville, Alabama. What can I use to mix audio from multiple audio channels over SDI into a device that only handles SDI channels 1 and 2, preferably small and compact enough for a mobile camera rig?
Did we stump the panel here today? Nobody's got anything.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think here. I'll raise my hand.
Is this multiple SDI audio signals or like
Yeah.
analog signals that need to go into SDI? Because if it's analog signals that you need to mix into SDI, you could just go into the audio input on the camera and use that to do your conversion.
Well, what
He
you
says-
what I'm reading this as is you need to reroute, either listen to all the channels that are coming through, or possibly be able to reroute them as they go through.
It says they're coming in over SDIs. I read it.
Yeah.
I mean, a ATEM, switcher will allow you to do, but it won't allow you to do 16 channels down to 2.
He said in the chat here, he said it's one SDI feed with more than 2 channels on it.
But I guess the question is, what does he actually want to remix them? Remix the channels, or is it that he wants to hear them all? So those are two very different things, because you can sum them all together. So for instance, if you're using a 1080p stream, a 1080, not a 4K stream, the old Pix 240s are still very valuable because they can allow you to listen to any of the 16 channels or sum them all together and listen to all of them as they come in. So that's because that sound device has made it. And so it's not made anymore. So that's the tricky part is we had more granular control on a Pix 240 when it comes to listening to those. I'm trying to think. They're also, another way to do that is there is and I can't think of the name of the company right now. There's a company that will embed and de-embed over Dante from an SDI signal. So, and we just, it just came out a couple months ago. And I don't know if someone else can find it and put it in Mukana, but it basically it's just SDI in and out, and it's good Dante in and out, and it just will let you de-embed and embed in and out of that device. And we know some folks that are using them that are pretty happy. I haven't gotten one yet, but we're going to, because that's super valuable. It's about $1,500, which is a lot cheaper than many of the other options to do the same thing.
Mark?
Sorry, Alex covered it. Mickey had just put in the comments, de-embed and then embed.
There you go.
All right. Next question.
Next question is from Ron H. in West Michigan. Has anyone evaluated the mic from Tula? Looks like a very interesting item if you need audio backup file on the built-in SD card recorder.
Jeffrey?
So I haven't reviewed it because it's apparently brand new. Somebody talked about it the other day. Basically what it is a microphone, desktop style. Reminds me of the IK Multimedia had a Raspberry that was very similar to this, very foldable. It's got 8 gigabytes worth of memory inside there to record up to 14 hours. They don't really say what it records in. I'm guessing it's recording in an MP3 style format, something once compressed, because 14 hours on 8 gigabytes is the key right there. But it's got a pretty decent range from 50 hertz to about, I think they said 20 kilohertz. And of course it sits on the desktop, so it doesn't get as close to the mouth as you might want it to. But if you're doing any live stream or recording or anything like that, you could probably have, you have one and then your host have one, and then they can send you the file and you can do some post-processing with it and probably could possibly have a better sound in the end.
Alex?
As most people know, that I'm pretty touchy about audio. So any mic more than about 18 inches from the mouth is not something I'm interested in. So when it comes to like doing a show, 18 inches is maximum for a shotgun mic. I have one right here. It's about 18 inches away if I wanted to use it. But even then it's like, okay. So the idea of putting something on a desk really makes me feel like, why would I want to record that? Because it's not going to be usable. So, the chances of it being really great audio is very low at the distance, unless you can mount it somewhere that's much closer to the person. And then the form factor doesn't make any sense.
Roscoe?
Yeah, around this price point, I'd look at the Rode Go. It also records on board and it's a wireless mic system. You probably want to buy a different mic than what comes built in, but it has a lot of this functionality. The only thing I don't like about it is it's clunky. The interface to actually get those audios back off the device is a little bit clunky, but it does work.
Great. Next question.
Next question is from JHB in New York. He said, do you find it better to have one person calling the shots and one person doing the actual switching, or a single person just doing both?
Jason?
It depends on the type of show, and it depends on how many inputs and sources that you have. For us, we found out when it comes to doing sports, it seems to work better just having the tech director call out the shots. But it actually is good to have a producer stand over or stand by with the technical director to figure out when we're going to go to break and what we're going to run during those particular times. I know with my students, we also do things like our nomination convention, which has 10 different source inputs and like 4 MEs attached to it as well, when we're mixing a lot of stuff over the top of it, and it's much better to have someone else calling the shots for that. In Makana, I just linked to the Super Bowl 50 halftime show, where you can actually see a producer actually call out the shots to the TD and see how that works and how that flows together, versus something like a church, which might only have 4 inputs. You can kind of get away with only having one individual calling the shots there. It really kind of just depends on the show.
Alex?
I think it comes down to skill and budget. I think that a person calling the show and a person cutting the show separately is always better, as long as both of them are good at what they do. So if you may have someone who would call the show, and it's better to have them just go ahead and cut it because the person isn't skilled enough that would be cutting it. But if both people are if you have a highly skilled board operator and a highly skilled director, it will always be a better show, because the skilled operator can be worried about all the other little things, the super sources and the lower thirds and all the other things they got to figure out. And they're working on those things while the director is able to look at the big picture and be thinking about it. It's just not something that there's something that one brain can do, but it's rarely, if you have 2 very talented people, they're always going to produce a better show when we separate those things out.
Roscoe?
And the narrative show, the timing of the shots is so critical that literally it comes down to a finger snap. And so you have to have this incredible working relationship with your TD, but there's no way the TD can be thinking technology and then also thinking the timing of the actors when exactly that reaction shot needs to be taken. So it's critical that I think you have 2 people that are very well versed, and you get down to where a snap of the fingers and it instantly happens.
Relationships. All right. So next question.
Next question is from Chris Widner from Lafayette, Indiana. Which lav would everyone recommend for a road go-to?
Guy?
I don't know about everyone, but I'll go ahead and say my recommendations, because they're going to escalate up to the top pretty quick. So Countryman B3, B6, Sanken would have the COS 11D. For budget, I'd still be in that B3 range from Countryman, but also Rode Lavalier itself is in the 250 range. Then Mickey 2, Sennheiser Mickey 2 would be another popular one. And then all the way up to the top is the DPA 4060 series, probably $700 range with Core. Those would be the recommendation.
Very robust list. Next question.
Next question is from Michael Marsh in San Anselmo. If you wear glasses, what is the best way to light your face to keep the eyes out of shadows and avoid reflections?
Will?
For reflections, get some anti-reflective, anti-glare coating for your glasses. This pair has it. This pair doesn't. And so you can see the difference that it makes whenever I start looking towards the light. And then other than that, just being aware of how your lights are placed and just watching your preview and playing around till you get it right.
Chad?
Yeah, mine's more of a case of what not to do. As Jeffrey pointed out earlier, I'm in a transitional studio right now because I'm moving, and all my light is coming from above. So you do have this shadow. You do have a lot of reflection on the glass. You can always point the glasses like this so that you catch less of that, and it's less obvious when you're looking directly at the camera. But don't do what I'm doing. I'm just stuck.
Alex?
I'm using a linear polarizing filter on my camera, and I'm using a linear polarizing film on my light. And when I turn it, I can't reach it right here, but if I turn it, you'll see the light come back on my glasses, and when I turn it back, it disappears. So by polarizing both of those, you can get them out and filter out the light if you choose to, without doing anything to the glasses.
Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. He said, how would you handle security and access control in the Belfast Method production?
Rupert?
I'm not involved with the Belfast method specifically yet, but I've been a bit observing what's been going on. And for things like it, obviously, VPNs form a large part of that pipeline. And once you're getting beyond just connecting a couple sites, you're getting into this sort of mesh model where you need multiple sites connected over VPN, you need low latency, all that stuff, and that can really become a challenge. So it is something worth considering how it is you're going to manage. If you're using something like a Meraki platform or even Ubiquiti, then that gives you a good tool to look at this stuff end to end. But really, even once you have that, the thing that can become a challenge is IP addressing, first of all, because you might find that a lot of your remote contributors or producers have networks of a similar IP range, and you're going to end up with network conflicts. So just simply managing your IP addresses is step one to being able to manage the security. You want to come up with some kind of IP addressing plan. And if you're using a single platform to manage it like a Meraki, or I know Jim's even looking at AWS now, you can then come up with an aliasing plan to say these range of IPs are my producers, these range of IPs are my switches or whatever. And then you can come up with a access control list where you can alias all those things and populate them with the names for each production. Okay, this week we're going to set it up this way. Our TDs are Bob and Jones, and then those will populate your firewall rules, and you can lock that stuff down and know that you've got it kind of end to end. But also think about something like KeePass or LastPass for managing your credentials, so people have somewhere to drop in and get passwords and stuff like that.
Jeffrey?
So what you can also do is if you got commercial or regular residential internet like Spectrum, which a lot of us have, then you might want to bump yourself up to a business account so you can have a dedicated IP address rather than a DHCP connection. And then having something like an SD-WAN put in there with the MLPS so you can have a more direct route from one person to the other. And that's if you are if it's going to be the same multiple locations every single time. If it bounces from location to location, that makes that part a little bit harder. But also have the shared something shared in the cloud like AWS that you can go to if all else fails.
Next question.
Next question is from Serge Sherbrooke in Quebec. How would you offer help technical to teacher school if they need to go back to school at home? Help teachers use what they have, give them a list or a device to have, trying to get myself ready if needed for the Delta variant.
Will?
Real basic, have a pair of headphones that you're going to use. If at all possible, a different microphone other than the one on your laptop. But just even if it's just a set of Apple earbuds, using that is going to make your audio so much better and make your students actually listen more. And just get familiar with Zoom. If you need a document camera, you can use your iPhone or Android phone even. There's settings to do that. And then reach out to your school's tech guys. They've probably already got some good recommendations based on what they've got at school and what y'all use. Because everybody just went through this last year. So we're all pretty primed and revved up for it. So,
Roscoe?
Yeah, I have a list. It's in our Discord called the Golden List under teaching, in the education section, teaching tricks. And it basically just goes through a video that Jeff, I'm moosing his last name right now, Jeff, who does audio and really great. Oh, sorry, too many Jeffs.
Jeff Francis.
Thank you so much. Jeff Francis did. I would show him that video, and then I would just, here's a list of all the things, pretty inexpensive. And then, it ramps up into the ATEM and 6K cameras, but that's not where I'd expect a teacher to go.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, contacting the IT department before you go home, first of all, make sure you're taking things home with you. If it looks dicey at all, take everything you're going to need from your classroom. But getting that external monitor, because one of the biggest problems my teachers had were, they were issued a Chromebook or a laptop, and trying to manage a Zoom and keep your presentation open and have other stuff up for attendance purposes or email, it just got too much to see on like a 13-inch or 15-inch screen. So getting that external monitor to hook up is really important. Jeffrey?
I think that the biggest thing is that, in the next 5 years, we're going to be, when we house hunt, we're not going to be looking for open spaces. We're going to be looking for houses with a room that's going to be set up for conferencing for the kids to do, because, snow days are gone. because now we can do it all virtually. So the tech there is important, but having the space to do whatever you're going to do is even just as important, because you're inviting people into your home. And when it comes to the teacher-student experience, you probably don't want the students to see how your living room's set up or how your bedroom's set up or anything like that. So having that extra area to set up different things, set up curtains and things like that is very important. So, but other than that, yeah, having more than one computer. So if that first computer gets overloaded, which we will do with trying to put on too much stuff, then you have that secondary computer that you can offload things to.
Yeah, the secondary computer is really great too, because you can sign in and see what the students see. And that really helps as well, especially if you're not comfortable yet. All right, next question.
And as a quick note for our panelists, let's try to keep it. If you see in the back end, there's already 2 people that have answered the question, or that are going to answer the question. Don't put any more in because we're running out of time. So we're going to try to keep it. And then as you answer it, try to keep them pretty succinct so we can get to the top of the hour. Next question is from Robert Green in Los Angeles. NDI is in use at ESPN. Where do you see this video standard going in the future?
Jason?
I think NDI is going to become like HDMI is today, and 2110 will be like SDI is now for most video people.
Guy?
Yeah, I see it's growing into some hardware switchers that are based on like the TriCaster or VisRT that are a lot cheaper. So Panasonic has one that's some crazy amount, like $30,000, and I just see that price coming down lower and lower. So we'll have a combo switcher that has everything HDMI, SDI, and NDI all in one. So that's what I'm hoping, at least, and I think that's the future. I think it's coming. It's just a matter of time.
Alex, next question.
Next question is from from JHB in New York. What do you think will be the next DJI drone release?
Alex?
Typically, DJI is focused heavily on sensor capabilities. So my guess is anything we see an update for. I mean, they've gone about as small as they can go, but it's how small, how quiet, and sensor quality is usually where we see upgrades in the updates. There's also, I mean, there's tons of updates that we don't see, which are a lot of their industrials, which are very interesting.
Next question.
Next question is from Ted Claudio from. Oh, I'm sorry, I had the wrong thing from Ted. Quezon City in the Philippines. If you connect 2 ATEM Minis to the same computer, will it appear as 2 virtual cams, and can it be controlled separately via ATEM Software Control, since it has 2 different static IP addresses?
Peter?
So the answer to that first part of that question is yes, because it is in fact 2 USB devices, and 2 just separate USB devices, and thus 2 just separate USB cameras. The other half is more complicated. I've been told that on a Windows machine, you can have 2 separate instances of the ATEM control software running, and it works just fine. On a Mac, that's a little bit more complicated to effect. And that's why I use Mix Effect Pro to control my ATEMs. Thank you very much.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, exactly. The big thing is if you unplug the 2 USB ATEMs and then replug them in, the numbers might start to switch around. So camera 1 might become camera 2 in some situations. Camera 2 becomes camera 1. Mix FX Pro, I was going to say that exact same thing. You'll be able to put in both ATEMs into that and switch a lot easier than you would on any PC or Mac desktop, and basically go from there. So it's very functional. I would personally be using the HDMI out to capture cards to bring it in rather than the USB, but it's all what you have in your drawers.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Which editing audio software is most used on national level broadcast productions? Avid Media Composer and Pro Tools? ?
Roscoe?
Film Video Magazine used to do a survey. It was overwhelmingly an Avid world, and I don't know what the news organizations use, but on narrative end, it's still pretty much an Avid world.
Jason?
Just in a text to a buddy who works at ESPN, said Avid, the Adobe Suite, Grass Valley Cube, and Pro Tools.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Roscoe Jones. Follow up to Discord, app versus browser. which browser do you prefer and which do you avoid?
Chad?
As a creature of habit, I'm using Chrome, but I did a quick search while we were running up to this question, and apparently the preference is Opera, then Edge, then Firefox, and probably stay away from Chrome because it hogs memory.
Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Which VPN server would you recommend for a successful Belfast setup? Would OpenVPN server be useful, or Prytunnel better?
Rupert?
So obviously the Belfast method is a sort of still an experimental platform and an iterative process. So I'm sure there's going to be lots of different solutions that are explored. Jim Hankins yesterday was talking about the AWS global VPN acceleration platform, and that sounds really pretty slick. So in a global collaboration, I'm not sure we'll find anything better than how that sounds.
Next question. Or sorry, Alex.
No, that's fine.
Alex.
That's
okay.
Well. Rupert hit it. Next question is from Ted Claudio from Quezon City, Philippines. Looking for an alternate to Zoom livetrac L8 because I can't control it with Companion. Any suggestions for at least 4 mic inputs and 2 aux outputs under $600?
And did we stump the panel again?
I think we did. I think that the mixture of controlling it with Companion, having those setups and being under $600 might not be achievable. So I can't think of anything. I don't know. Can you control Companion at all? Like the XR18, can it interact with the XR18 is the only thing that I think would be close.
It could if the company made a patch to it, but I don't think it's in the list.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing I can think of in that price range.
All right.
It's all Companion's all open source, so anybody can make anything for it. Just
But
so
it's,
you know.
it's the Behringer side is the issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure.
All right. Next question.
Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas says, has anyone seen a motorized camera slider used in a Zoom call? Could this lead to an interesting effect or just a distraction?
Alex?
Fundamentally, the challenge with using moving cameras in Zoom is that Zoom, the temporal compression is very, in a low latency connection, is very sensitive to lots of pixels moving. And so by having a soft move, what you're most likely going to see is jumps over that in slow moves because it doesn't handle that very well from a temporal and spatial compression perspective.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, I'm doing it right now. I have my main camera is always on a slider. And I use that basically so I can move the camera if it's in frame, out of frame. So I suppose, yeah, the slower will be the better to keep any type of signal stable.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Stan Chan in Roseville. Can the URSA Mini 12K stream 8K? What encoder would you use?
Alex?
Yeah, so you actually can't do 8K streaming out of 8K or out of the 12K camera. It can record 12K, it can record 8K, it can record 8K 120, but it can only push out 4K. I think 4K 60 is the highest frame rate and resolution that will go out of the 12K. So it's a very, very complex math there, and it's actually why I'm really interested in getting a 12K, but I'm waiting until October to make sure Blackmagic doesn't release anything new, because it feels like it's a slightly in between thing, and they just dropped the price. so we just want to, we're kind of like, oh, let's just watch what happens here.
Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. He says, when you talk about the importance of relationships in a cohesive production, what tools can we use as a community to help us build those relationships? Would after hours be a core component, or would Discord and projects like the Belfast Method help more?
Will?
I think the online tools are great for sharing information, building online community. When you're in an actual production environment, though, it's more the personal relationships that are going to help carry you through. We were talking on After Hours last night about the difference between just being short in a live production and then the people that are actually abusive and kind of, will yell at people at the drop of a hat.
Rupert?
Yeah, so the the resources that we have available now are different to the resources that we used to have. In a remote world, you don't necessarily get the opportunity to go to lunch with somebody or ride home with somebody, or those interactions. So the tools and the resources we have are different now. It's important to acknowledge them. I don't know that any one is better than the other. It's about finding the right mix that works for you and helps the relationships that you want to build, but don't put one above the other, I'd say.
Jason?
I'm reminded of two musical groups, Fleetwood Mac and then Brooks and Dunn. Brooks and Dunn had separate tour buses, but they would always go together on their tours. It allowed them to create, to have a great working and personal relationship without getting stacked too much on top of each other. And then also Fleetwood Mac, a lot of their albums that they were recording back in the day, you had two couples that were really kind of estranged and going at each other, yet they had to go out and perform songs together. So just understanding the difference between working relationship and personal relationship and how to integrate the two without over layering the two.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that the thing that in general makes the best system, and what we're trying to build here in office hours and after hours and everything else that we're doing, is it's always helping everyone. In Buddhism, there's a thing called, in Mahayana Buddhism, they call it the big boat, which is that there's no way to get to nirvana without everyone getting there, without working on everyone getting there. And so when you're, the way I've looked at business, or how I've done everything for the last 30 years, is that I try to help the people in front of me, because they have great ideas, but they don't have enough people to do it. So you try to help those people move forward and be successful. And then you help the people behind you, because they are the next people that are going to be in front of you or around you, and you help the people around you because you're all trying to figure it out. And as you do that, as you jump into the Belfast methods, as you help people in after hours, as you show up as a panelist on office hours, as you ask questions in office hours and be part of Discord, all of those things are a thing that helps as you help that community. And especially anytime you try to take something out of it, you're basically spending, I call it spending your karma, so, and that can be like hey, didn't I do a good job? You just spend it. so, constantly pushing things into the community and serving that community without any expectation of direct benefit generally builds up a pressure that serves you all the time, and it's a really hard thing for people to do, but it is the most valuable in my opinion.
And last question.
Last question for the first hour is from Douglas Carmichael. In the case of ABBA Voyage show, how would ILM share content between 4 studios if they aren't located close to each other? Would they probably use a storage area network or a private fiber between each site?
Alex?
SohoNet. That's how they do it. So you can SohoNet is how they all do it. So anyway, it's a network of fiber that is subscribed to by all the studios, and that's how they move all their files around. So anyway, that's the most popular. All right, I'm going to jump in here real quickly, and just from you can, I guess, Emily, go ahead and you can invite everybody in.
Yeah, I was just going to invite the educators in. We finished the first hour. I see someone I'm excited to see here. Erica has joined us. She's a friend of Aaron's, and she is awesome with green screen stuff. She is the green screen girl. So I'm so excited she's here with us today. But if you're an educator, you just raise your hand. You can join us, and we'll get ready for mic checks.
And while you do mic checks, I'm going to step away for 10 minutes. Let's just start right at 8:15. We're starting just a little late. Sorry for our educators there. We ran right up to the end of the hour, but we're going to give you 15 minutes to kind of settle in, or 12 minutes to settle in a little bit. We'll see you here. And at 8:15 is when we'll kick it back off again.
Bye, YouTube.
And Mark,
Stop the stream.
you got to stop